100.
Are you nervous, man?
Oh man, I just took some Xanax.
Calming down.
Yeah, just calming down, man. Just calming down.
100 podcasts for Crushing Iron.
Wow.
Who would have ever thought two, normal Southern boys could pull this off?
Man, not me.
Mid-South, Midwest.
Yeah. Not gonna lie, I didn't know how far we'd make it. But if you told me we'd have made it to 100, I'd have been like, yeah, that probably would have taken us like 3 years.
I know, right? I mean, it's quite a commitment, really. I'm pretty proud of that in the general sense. It's like it's kind of wild how it kind of sort of coincides with 100 days to Louisville. It's almost like training for an Ironman, and it pays off in the long run, right?
It does, and yeah, man, it's crazy, but awesome.
Now, we went around and around about trying to, pull together some sort of special guest or some kind of big ordeal for this 100th podcast. But I just feel like, and I think that we both sensed that it was just sort of out of character. I mean, that's not the point of what we're doing, really. It's like, I just, think we want to do what we want to do, and without the, sort of pomp and circumstance all wrapped around it. And so we decided that today we're just going to kind of look at this Crushing Iron podcast, what it started at, what it is, what it means to us, that sort of stuff. And I think you're cool with that, right? I mean,
oh, absolutely. I totally agree with that. I never, we talked about that in the outset of when we started to do this. I mean, we may have guests from time to time when I feel like they're influential, people that flow within what our podcast is about, not a podcast driven by having guests. Because I don't necessarily think that, I think that actually just more for the guest than it does the audience in terms of exposure. And we've always wanted this to be about the audience. So yeah, I'm all in for what does Crushing Iron mean to us podcast as we hit triple digits.
Yeah, I like having. I mean, it's not that we don't want to have guests. I think it's just that sort of like, we've touched a lot of people. Tons and tons of people have reached out to us, and it's been, it's obviously impacted, a lot of listeners and people who are involved in our closed group at Crushing Iron, and there's this sort of mentality in today's age where it's like you always got to scale up and get more and everything like that. And I just think that we're sort of we've never really wanted to go down that road per se. I mean, I've done I listen to a lot of sort of marketing type things, and one of the things I heard the other day was that throughout evolution, mankind is used to and most happiest in smaller kind of tribes or whatever throughout history.
Yep.
And then the bigger things get, the more disconnected everybody feels, and like it kind of like it's sort of what's going on in the world. I mean, everything's so big, and everything's got to be the next big thing and get so much attention and everything like that. And I think that's what we both wanted, right? Is just to sort of grow under control, keep it, smaller, not worry about busting down the highest ranks of iTunes with downloads and things like that. I just think it's more meaningful, and I think it's more connective when we can just sort of be there every week and not have to stress about getting guests and trying to make some big thing that we're not always. That's just
agree 100%.
I'm glad that you agree with that. It's funny that one of the things that we hear occasionally is that people will start listening and they'll kind of go, "What the hell is this thing?" It's sort of like just two guys just like publishing their conversation about triathlon, and at first they're like, "What the hell do they think they're doing?" or "What is this?" And then the point becomes, after I think people sort of kind of get into it, and yeah, we do kind of just BS about triathlon, but I think that that's really kind of a missing link in a lot of triathletes' lives, is that they don't get to have that conversation or just talk about stuff that no one else really wants to talk about in their lives. And that's just sort of what we're doing. But there's a ton. I mean, I can just speak for myself, but I mean, there's a ton of really good functional triathlon information that you've talked about, that we've talked about over the course of the 100 podcasts. And I mean, if people dig back through, they will, discover a lot of, actionable, information and, stuff like that. And in fact, we've talked about it many times, like, wow, man, we share, because I think there's a lot of podcasts that kind of hold back, and don't really give all the behind the curtain stuff. And I think that's sort of what our biggest thing is completely transparent. We're just sort of out there and telling people whatever we know and whenever we think of it or discover it, right? I mean,
and that, and because again, it all goes back to really just honestly, just being, what I would say, I always call it the how, and that's being honest, open, and willing. And that's always being honest, and forthcoming, and talking about things probably a lot of people don't, and then being open in terms of sharing knowledge and training advice, and responding to emails, whether it's emails or Facebook messages that I get from athletes that are not being coached or that want me to look over their plan, or that are being coached and have questions, and you got to be really careful with that. And then the willingness is just to take the time to answer every single email or Facebook message, and give people tips, or give people and that's the genesis of behind what I've always wanted to accomplish with this, even though I had absolutely zero clue it would ever amount to what I think it's amounted to these first 100 episodes, in terms of the community aspect and the amount of people that have actually listened. And yeah, I'm sure there are people who listen to one or two episodes and are like, or maybe like halfway through and never make it through a full episode, because like, what are these guys even talking about? But I think if you listen them all into in order, even kind of a little bit out of order, they kind of see that the and then you ping into the the Crushing Iron closed Facebook group, and it's like, man, like there's a pretty good groundswell of good things that are going on, and you can only have good things if you have good people.
Yeah.
And while I by no means want to give that credit to you and I in terms of gathering all the good people on our own, but we had a lot of really, really awesome outgoing, like I couldn't name them all, but a solid core of what I would call like founding members of people who like found our podcast and hopped in on the Facebook closed group, and then all of a sudden a few months later we're having people on the podcast, a few months later we're doing Facebook lives, a few months later we're having camps. Like in
right.
Nashville,
I know.
like to think that we went from like me being in Kansas City and just starting this out to see what happened to 4 or 5 months later being in Nashville holding camps for people from all over the country, hanging out and have coffee and like enjoy, like, and that's the part that blows my mind in just an awesome way, and it's really been an incredible journey up to this point.
I think it's a testament to what a lot of people call, scratching your own itch. We kind of just started with, because like I said, we like talking about this stuff, right? And it was just sort of a kind of an outlet for us. And we're like, we didn't really feel like, it's like a lot of podcasts anymore are all these like, how to get better, 6 ways to, whatever, to turn your life around and all that sort of stuff. And we just kind of wanted to, like, I guess, dip ourselves into the conversation of triathlon, getting better, and it's great, when you mention the people, that because it is all about, like, we wanted to kind of be involved in a community of people who wanted to get better and explore and learn and just figure this stuff out, because we're all in it together, right? And it's like I think anybody who gets into triathlon, you've talked about it many times, does it for a reason, And I was thinking about this, and then of course, most, and I don't know about most, I don't know the numbers on this, but I would assume a lot of the time that people get into triathlon and they dip their toe in maybe an Olympic. I'd like to know how many people actually turn that into a full at some point in their life, because I was just thinking about, at the core of this, anybody that finishes an Ironman, whether it's 9 hours or 17 hours, I mean, that is an amazing accomplishment. I mean, I've changed, how many, we talked about it before. You said, I mean, I think I don't know if there's stats on it, but that's like 1% of 1% of I don't know, some sort of like crazy number of people even move toward this or even attempt it, and
less than 1% of people in the world.
Yeah, or 1% of 1%, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's way less than that is even like accomplished one. And that's, and we have so many of those, people that listen to the podcast or athletes that I coach, and that's like, and when people ask me, whenever they ask me about coaching, what kind of athletes do you coach? And I'm like, I literally, like these past, like, I don't know, less than 30 days has been like a perfect example. Like, last month we had athletes, grabbing podium spots at an Ironman event for the first time. We had athletes competing at 70.3 World Championships. And then in just the last year, 24 hours, an athlete, finishing their first Olympic and very first Ironman, pretty close to the finish in Maryland. And we coach everyone in between. And the reason I love that is because you get such a wide variety of people. I think it's, and I'm sure there'd be a lot of people that would argue with me on this, but I think it's easier to only coach a certain personality type, and you'll usually find that if you only coach elite athletes, it can, in my opinion, it seems somewhat robotic sometimes, because they just do the work and never have questions, and there's no variabilities, and they're super type A, and their time is not as limited, But what I love the most about coaching such a wide variety is the overcoming of what these people have to do, and like and how much thought and time has to go into coaching the athlete who wants to go to Kona, or coaching the athlete who's like worried about finishing their first Olympic, or the mom who wants to do her second Ironman but works a full-time job, has 2 kids, is divorced, and then works a second-time job sometimes on every other weekend so that she can pay to do this because it's important to her. Like, all those things, like, combined, like, are the reasons that I love this, and the fact that there's a podcast out there that I think has pretty good information, but it's called the Kona Edge, and it's all about people going to Kona, which is like the less than 1% of the 1% of people who even do Ironman. So it's hard for people to relate, and I think that's what I've enjoyed most about these athletes and these listeners and the people in the closed group, and the people that we've come to camp, is like, I really, really like being the 80%. The what I would call like the average Joe. And even though not everybody is an average Joe, but appealing to everyone, hopefully, in that all things are possible, and that hopefully we cover enough content and knowledge and on and off the race course to help both the elite athlete and the person who is, I really hope that we have at some point convinced an athlete that they can do one.
Yeah.
And that's what I'd take the most pride in, it is offering content and knowledge that makes the sport more accessible, more reasonable, more open, and more attainable for a person who may have doubted it.
What I love about this sport is, I think the ultimate thing I love about it is the breakthrough that people have, not only in triathlon, but just in their lives. And let's face it, I think when people pull a trigger on any triathlon, there's a lot of fear that, if it's new, and it can be from a sprint to a half to a full, there's a lot of fear in there, and that's basically facing your fears, and that's what I love. I mean, that's such an important factor of this, is like, I love when people face their fears, because that's what we have to do. I mean, I think I told you this story probably, but I used to play college baseball, and I was pretty good. You know, I was at a fairly high level, you know, decent player, and every time I stepped on that field, I was afraid. And, you know, it just, you know, I didn't have a choice a lot of times, obviously, but it's just something you had to overcome. And I don't know where that comes from. I mean, I think that's just part of life sometimes. But one of the reasons why I would think I was so afraid is because, you know, you remember that Bill Buckner thing?
Oh, yeah.
The ground ball that went
Yep.
through his legs.
Yep.
I mean, Bill Buckner had a great career, and that is what defined it. You know,
Exactly. Yeah,
and,
or Bartman for the Cubs.
yeah, yeah. I mean, seriously, it's stuff like that. That's why I love baseball so much. I think is because it's such a in a way, it's kind of similar to triathlon because you're so on your own in a lot of ways. And I just, whenever I watch these playoff games that are going on right now, that's the kind of stuff I think about. It's like, you know, it's the ninth inning. You know, the game's about wrapped up, and you may not have had one play the whole game, but when that dude swings the bat and that ball's coming your way, you better not screw that up, or that could be the defining moment. And I think, you know, that's the kind of stuff that, you know, it takes to kind of do triathlon in a lot of ways. I mean, like, I'm not quote unquote afraid to do this Ironman, but you do think that, wow, man, you know, you don't want to screw it up, and you know, you just have to face that, and you realize that it's going to be okay. But I don't know. I just think, like, the minute I saw that Buckner play, I knew that dude. I mean, he didn't like go back to Boston for like 20 years after that. I mean, what a deal, you know. But he got over it eventually, and I just think that we have a lot of. I really enjoy the way people find ways to get through their fears and actually, you know, jump in the water. Basically, you know, it's just. I always call it walk the plank, you know. It's like, you know, no turning back. Let's just go and grow.
Yeah, yeah, and to me that is kind of what this whole thing has been, you know, or what I, you know, what is like crushing iron mean to me, and it's like, you know, one is you know, overcoming obstacles in the right way, and unwavering blind support of other people. And you know, I think you said something like, you know, well, you know, being uncomfortable, you know, or doing stuff like that, that's just life. But that's actually not the case, because so many people spend so much time avoiding like uncomfortable situations or things that might scare them. You know, it's like one of the first things that a person ever told me when I was getting sober was, if it makes you uncomfortable or it makes you nervous, you have to do it. Because you find so much about yourself in you that you never thought was there, that you become something or in someone that you never thought you could. And I think a lot of people do that when it comes to, you know, Ironman, is they, you know, it's funny that, like, you know, at the end of the journey, they probably, like, their race week, like for Louisville, for us, like, there's probably a lot of people right now that are doing Ironman Louisville or just Ironman Maryland or have got Ironman Florida coming up or whatever, and they probably have a time in the back of their head, but when they signed up, they didn't have a time.
Right.
They were, you know, they were either, you know, I think you can generally put two people in two buckets, and that's, you know, people have so much chaos or darkness going on in their life that they need something to kind of stabilize or right the ship, so they sign up for an Ironman. Or their life has gotten too fine and too okay that they crave chaos, so they add in something that, like, they would never do, and they may be one and done, but they're like, I just need something different, and so they choose this. And so when they start about it, or they start off in it, it's, you know, about overcoming obstacles and finding things out about themselves along the way that they would have never, literally never found out about themselves had they not put themselves in the situation. And then the other part of it, that's probably my favorite part, is, like, I guess the best example is, last night I had, you know, Lisa Stevenson was finishing Ironman Maryland, and there's a running in the darkness, and there's another athlete that's on our team, Jessica Voss, and they've literally never met. Never met.
Yeah.
They could have totally different viewpoints on everything in life. Yet Jessica was like, I'll be up there volunteering and supporting, and then out of nowhere on the second loop of the run, here comes Jessica to run with Lisa. Total strangers. First time they ever met.
Yeah.
On the run course at an Ironman, cheering each other on. Like, that's the part of the community and part of this Crushing Iron and C26 triathlon that makes me the happiest, is bringing like such awesome people together, especially in a world where people love to divide and separate and like take a defensive stance. Is that we've found so many athletes that we coach, and then so many people. Like, that's the thing I'm most excited about when I talk about racing this weekend, is like meeting all these people I've never met before. Like, and we're all coming together around, like, not really Louisville. It's just a place to meet because we all happen to live there. People are coming to race and spectate. It's just like we kind of have all these things in common, and that we just want to get better.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not really a time associated with getting better. There's just an effort and a commitment, and that's what allows you to become your best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the support. I think we all just need that in life in general, and I think that's what it is too. At the core, is it? It's just like, it's like I always feel like, everybody, we're all flawed individuals. We're all human, and I think it's important for us to all remember that. You know what I mean? And I think that the way sort of at the nucleus of why everybody comes together is that we just sort of accept that we're all human. We understand that we're all on sort of some path. There's a great quote that I like. It's like, it says, "You may think you know me, but you don't know where I'm going." And
mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people turn that corner, or that corner they start to turn happens a long time, maybe before they sign up for an Ironman or something like that. But it's like, then you finally make that step, and that doesn't define you. That's just a vehicle of where you're going in life. And I think that, while we can't articulate that necessarily in clean terms all the time, I think just there's a deep understanding, of that everybody is going someplace. And I think there's just sort of a blind support of like, I'm behind you, and
yeah.
That's what I love,
it's,
man.
It's like, it's both. Yeah, that's such a great comment. Like, you don't know where I've been, and you have no idea where I'm going.
Yeah.
It's like, we're also quick to judge, like, people on this like flash in a pan, circumstance, whether it's their best or their worst.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact is that, like, those are like two, probably outlier situations. It's the middle part and how much farther and consistent a person can go that really makes up who these people are. And that's, it's like you see these individuals that are completing these races and doing these things. Like, I know for me, it has made me appreciate and be more grateful and more probably more open, like, because when I'll see other people, or I'll see, instead of thinking, oh man, like, this must be really hard for you to do this, I look at it in terms of how just incredibly crazy awesome is that you have this like ability, or that you are in a place like and I always talk about this for swimming. For me, like, I don't even know for sure that I would even be doing this if I hadn't swam year round growing up, because how hard it is for so many people to take on swimming.
Yeah.
And the fact that they can overcome like anxiety, like we're talking like, how you've got it sometimes, like paralyzing anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And that they pay money not to get a therapist, but to walk up to a starting line with sometimes thousands of people and know they're about to put themselves in situations where they might have to quit.
I know, man.
It's insane. And like no other, it's like I can't think of like any other like recreational sport, that's what this is, or hobby, that like people do that on a regular.
Yeah.
Yet we do that, and I think what's lost in so much of the excitement of racing, and whether it's your first sprint or that's your first Ironman, is that aspect of failure that we face and that we conquer, or that we even succumb to sometimes on race day or in training, and that sometimes we even just forget to apply it to our everyday life, and forget that oh yeah, like, what do you mean, what am I afraid of this for? Like, I've totally done this and paid money for it and like risked whatever it was I was risking. Who says I can't do this in like your regular day-to-day life? I mean, I think a lot of people do, but I also think a lot of people just forget how far they've come. And that's the other part that I love so much about what I hope we've been able to accomplish here, and that's providing perspective, and I guess even allowing people to voice or understand or be more comfortable with what life is and how they should, and the perspective they should have, on their life.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget, and me included, that it really is a process. Like, I trained up to Ironman #1, and when I got done, I was like, man, give me the world, bring it on, and that sort of fades. It's sort of like you have to dunk your head in the water over and over to kind of like, and like you said, translate it. How does it translate to life? These accomplishments, and the more confident you get, getting in the water or finishing Ironman or whatever it is, the more confident you can be in different situations. And it does, it translates. I think that we forget that a lot, and that's the goal, right? You said, I just thought of something earlier, when we were talking about the support, or that part about, you may think you know me, but you don't know where I'm going and stuff like that. It's like, okay, so how does that hierarchy work? I'm going to bring it up because I love Tupac, the rapper, because I love a lot of his lyrics, right? But he's got a song called "Only God Can Judge Me," and at the core, that means, I think that's what that means, right? Is like, only God knows everything about me, or whatever, and so what I've been trying to do, what I've been battling through, what I've been fighting through, right? And then a second tier on that, I think that's why the family part is so important, right? Is because the family knows you better than anybody, right? They've seen everything you've gone through and everything like that, and then we create, then the friendships sort of like evolve in that hierarchy, and so that's what I mean by like this group understanding, at least on some innate level, what everybody's going through. Everybody's trying to go down some road, and whether or not it's clearly defined, they're willing to, quote unquote, give the benefit of the doubt, or try to understand, or really, feel someone else's shoes, and I think that's just a huge part of it.
Well, I as usual, I agree.
We got to start disagreeing more.
Yeah, well, people say that. You said that once. I was like, but again, that would be for something that's not marketing, dissension or arguments. And while we don't always say things that are PC or always likable, what I think, the part of what you said that I think resonates with me the most is how the and I've always said this, is that being open and vulnerable allows other people to do the same.
Yes.
And in this sport, like, sometimes, like, I know that our Instagram feed is like our business one, and like some people we follow, I scroll through them like, that's such bullshit. Like, when you see like these guys and females like dressed in like skimpy bikinis, like leaning up against bikes, and I'm like, that's not real life. And people look at this, and people look at it when they probably Google or like search like triathlon, they see this bullshit and they think, oh well, why there's not a place for me in this sport. And that's not what it's about. Like, I specifically remember scrolling through our Instagram feed, and it was like this girl like looking over a balcony with all she had on was a bikini on, and she had like her bottoms like shoved so far up her butt crack that she like forced herself to have a wedgie, and then she got her left hand on her Specialized shiv, with like a bazillion likes, and I'm like, it's like that commercial, those old ladies, like, that's not how it works. Like, this isn't real life. But I'm sure that. But
we
but
should
that's
do
the
that
thing.
at Louisville. Get Kate to take pictures of hot
Perfect.
pictures of us.
Yeah, anybody
my
who
belly
wants
rolling
to
out
be scarred for life. And partake in our C26 therapy health insurance plan, you can contact us for some glamour shots at Louisville. But no, it's that like the people who do this sport, like, we're the everyday Joe. Like, we all have a struggle, we all have a past, we all have bad days, we all have good days, we all have in between. And it's like there's like most brands and most sports, like, they all market towards one type of person, but like this is a sport and running is the same, to where like you go on a race course and you can't tell me when you get off that you don't look back and think, like, dude, anybody can do this. And I'm here to tell you that, like, when people go spectate races, when people go to Louisville, or when people watch like the NBC coverage of Ironman Kona, no offense, but the fast age groupers and the pros don't inspire people.
Yeah.
It's the everyday person who you look at and think, hell yeah, man, if you can do it, I can do it.
Yeah, isn't that the ultimate thing right there?
It is, and that's I think, and that's why, people always complain about why they don't pay the pros more, and there's not this and that, and like, whatever. I get that side of it, but guess what? They don't drive the growth. The age groupers drive the growth, and it's not even the fast ones. Honestly, it's the people who finish in the bottom 20 to 40%, in my opinion. Or the ones who have come from barely being able to run to thinking, you know what? I think I can do this.
Mm-hmm. What a moment that is,
Exactly, and that is the other part that, like, of this sport that, like, just gives me like all the good warm and fuzzies. Is it like you had a sign that you showed me last year, from I think Ironman Louisville, that this little girl was holding up towards that, and you've posted and you put a blog about it before, and I think it's on a video somewhere, but that right there is like, that's like the essence of what this sport is supposed to be about. Mm-hmm. Individual journeys, individual growth, individuals pushing themselves beyond what they ever thought imaginable, and then hopefully an entire community that rallies around them and supports them regardless of their time, regardless of the way they look, regardless of how much money they have, regardless of what they know about the sport, but that we're all in it, because we are all in it together, and then we're racing against ourselves, and we're competing against ourselves, or our old selves, or who we want our future selves to be. And I want you to share that that moment, because I remember you texting me. I mean, very vividly, you texted me about it, and I know that it hit you pretty good too.
Mm-hmm. No doubt, man. I was standing at the end of the bike at Louisville, and it was getting close to cutoff, and I'd been shooting video all day, and it was kind of crazy. And I was just sort of walking up and going back to my car, actually, and there was a little girl, maybe 12 or 14 or something there, just standing in the middle of the road at Ironman Louisville. It was desolate, it was kind of one of those, like, end of the deal moments where the cutoff, I think, was like five minutes away, and this little girl was just sitting in the middle of the road with a sign that said, I can't remember what the sign said. Do you remember? It was sort of like
something about my mom.
Yeah, great job, Mom, or just something simple like, you're my Ironman, Mom, or something like that. And she was just sitting there in the road, and I just kind of took a picture of it. And
middle of the road.
Just in the middle of the road.
Yeah.
Nobody around. There was like maybe 2 volunteers waiting at the bike exit, because she was like literally one of the last ones to get off the bike. And And I said, I said, you all right? You know, and she said, yeah, I'm just waiting for my mom. And she was just sitting there, and I was shooting video, but I felt weird about turning on the video for this, and so I just kind of stood there and waited for a few more minutes, and I was like, you gonna be all right? And she's like, yeah, I'm fine. She should be coming, whatever. And I just a little bit of silence, and all of a sudden I looked away and I started kind of walking, and she goes, there she is, and she got up and screamed, Mom, and she ran at her with that sign flapping in the wind, and her mom came around that last corner and just like tucked in arrow, you know, kind of this slow, steady pace, and she rides up alongside of her daughter, and she just kind of looks over and goes, hey, you. It was just like this magical moment, and this girl just started running off with this sign, and that was flapping in the wind, and it was incredible.
Yeah, I pulled up your blog. I was trying to find I don't think you have the comment, but there's this picture for standing in the road. It's just like, that to me is like the perfect image of this sport.
Mm-hmm.
Or what it's supposed to be about. You know, I wish there were so many people there, and I give a lot of kudos to you and Ross and anybody else who went back, like at Wisconsin. Like, that's my goal for this year, is to go back and cheer, because there's nothing, regardless of when you finish, there's one winner in the race. Everybody else comes in on their own. And no matter what time you come in, it doesn't diminish your accomplishment, because they're all relative. You know, you could have a person coming in at the 10-hour mark who may have been in their worst race of their life, and you could have somebody coming in the 15-hour mark who a year before could barely even run. Like, you tell me what the better race was. Yeah. And the fact that, you know, sometimes you see dwindling numbers, and it's not like that at Louisville just because of how many people are there and the course and 4th Street Live, but yeah, that's just, you know, like I said, it's that unwavering support of everyone, regardless of where they've been. But it's that we don't even really know ultimately what a lot of these people that we hear from, or that even listen to this podcast, like, where they do want to go. But it's that we want to support you guys no matter what, whether it's just a sprint or just an Ironman or everything in between. You know, if we can do anything, you know, to and continue to do that, and that's what we're going to continue to do, is just support that, and hopefully give not training content, because honestly, to me, training content is pointless without perspective, and without allowing you, or hopefully giving you the opportunity to go along your route and journey and be hopefully more appreciative. And, you know, no matter what happens, be happy when you got to the start line, guilt-free, and just happy and excited.
Mm-hmm. What an accomplishment. I just laughed because I tried pulling up that article too, and to see what that sign said, and I clicked on a link, and it's this guy, AndrewRayner.com, literally copied and pasted my whole article and put his name on the byline. Just took credit 100% for every piece of writing that I wrote, which is interesting. Good for him.
We'll talk about him on Podcast 101. We'll keep this one positive, but your shit's coming, buddy.
Yeah. No, but I think ultimately that's awesome. I think that's exactly it. I think that our goal is, to help us, help everyone, you know, kind of find that place, and just, I mean, I think we're all looking to be free and just be who we are, you know, and that's like sort of finding that person within, and, you know, because we see, you know, highlights of what's going on all over the place, and we don't get to really see what's going on in their lives, and I think that a lot of what we're doing is just getting to the core of that. And like you're saying, man, it was like so awesome when people get to that start line and for the first time, and it's just like all that nervous energy, but what an accomplishment to get there. And we never lose, well, we try to never lose perspective on that, and that's sort of at the core of what we do, I think.
Yeah, I'll close it with this, but you know, I still have your thing pulled up, and you got this line, and he says, you know, she looked at me with heavy eyes and said, yes, I'm waiting for my mom. She's still out there. Mm-hmm. And then you said, you thought, wow, still out there could mean anything. And you're the first thing, like, have you heard anything? You know, because we all act like the Iron Track app can speak to us, or like
Yeah.
our friends like know, of course, like, have you heard anything? And we ask all the time. You know, she said no. And how much of that is like our life and our day-to-day struggles and battles is like, you know, a person still being out there is like, I know they're going through it. I know it's rough. I know they need to do this on their own. I wish I could help, but I can't. And then when you see them like come in on the bike or come out of this like dark place in their life or PR a race or cover a distance that you never could, like the people who support them, I think probably have just as much, if not a greater emotional attachment than the actual person that accomplishes it. And I think that's just there's so many little intricacies and analogies you can use about Ironman in life, but to me that just speaks volumes in about so many different areas of what the connective piece of this podcast for me has been, and that's just been like seeing people and hearing from people and watching people and working with people who have come out of these places. Because to me, as a coach, like the best comments I get, you know, on Training Peaks or whatever from athletes, or they like, yeah, I'm super pumped when my athletes, you know, complete like, you know, things and never, you know, like podium or do whatever, and you know, and do things that are, you know, first place, second place, whatever, you know, second or third Ironman, Kona, second or third, yeah, those are great. But it's like the little comments that I get from athletes, like I got one earlier today, and it was an athlete who like, she was like, that's the longest I've ever ran in 9 years. And like, that's it. That's 99 out of 100 of what we're all doing. It's like every day trying to find just that. It's not a place or a time. It's overcoming, and it's honestly, it's not surviving, because I think surviving is where you're just fine and you're okay being in that mode. It's overcoming, and it's choosing not to survive, but to make yourself into something that these circumstances more often not would make other people, you know, not be able to do it. And I think that's, you know, again, one of the million things that, you know, I love about this sport.
I agree 100%, buddy. Sorry for agreeing again. But, anyway, if you'd like to join our closed Facebook group, you search Crushing Iron Group on Facebook, and that's kind of where the stuff happens. Like all this stuff we're talking about is going on in there all the time. We're getting ready for Louisville this Sunday, and I guess we're ready.
We'll find out here this time next week.
Yeah. So if you like what you're hearing, you know, if you want to follow us on YouTube and Twitter, it's Crushing Iron, and you know, stop in the Facebook group and, you know, say hello, and everybody's cool. So
yeah, if you're looking for any training or coaching, or just to be a part of a growing and compassionate and awesomely wicked and fast and supportive team, you can email Mike at crushingiron@gmail.com, or you can email me at c26coach@gmail.com for more info, or you can always go to our website, which has all of our information nice, neat, and tucked away like a nice little you know, crispy Krab wonton at www.crushingiron.com.
That's it. All right, and that will wrap up 100 podcasts. And I guess we'll just keep going.
Yeah.
Well, we will. No, thank you.
200.
In all seriousness, thank you for everyone to support us. We do have a Patreon page that helps us pay the expenses for the podcast. It's patreon.com/crushingiron, and we really appreciate everybody that's on a monthly little donation, anything from $1 to $100 a month. If you want to do it. No, but anything, a little thing helps.
Yeah,
seriously.
I agree. Yeah, thank you for. And then also, there has been a huge uptick uptick in iTunes reviews the last month. So
Oh yeah.
thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for those of you who took time out of your day to give us your input and give a review. It means a lot to us. And you might think it helps us, but it really doesn't. It helps other people find us and find this community. And again, that's what it's all about. And if people see a podcast with one review, they're like, I'll pass. But if they see a podcast with 60 something reviews or 70 or 80 or 100, they go, I'll give it a listen. And those things might not seem like they're a big deal, but again, it all goes back to why we started, and that's reaching as many people as we possibly can, because the more people we can reach, the more people that we can connect with, the greater things we can all do together. And that's what we hope to continue doing, for the next 100 or 1,000 episodes.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's a great point. I think that's sort of a subtle way, and that's sort of what we just, I don't expect everyone to start sharing their, on their main feeds, everything we do or anything but that's a subtle way to endorse and support us and let people find it on their own. We're not, trying to jam anything down anybody's throats, and that's a great way to sort of say, hey man, I dig this, and if you want to check it out, I support it. So rather than, because it's a podcast about nothing, it's hard to kind of just explain. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that'll wrap up 100 podcasts from Crushing Iron. Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you later this week, and see you in Louisville. If you're anywhere near Louisville, get down there and check it out. It'll inspire you and hopefully make good things happen in your life.
Sounds good, man. I'll talk to you later.
All right, buddy. See you, man.
See you, dude.
Bye.